Greetings, it's I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, the Lord and Emperor here of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! Today, we're once again diving into Pathfinder and its world, Golarion. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about one of its various nations, Qadira. So, my question for the day, for all of you out there, whether you're joining me live on Twitch or on YouTube, is, have you played in Qadira before? Or had something to deal with it? That's just a question. And remember, if you're joining me live on Twitch, you follow would be nice, at least. That's a good way to give some support. And, always good chat there. That's where my question goes to. And if you're joining me on YouTube, answer the comments, but also, like, subscription, ring the bell, all those good things. Now that we got that kind of intro stuff out of the way, talk about Qadira. And the way I like to start talking about this is how I do this. I use the Pathfinder Wiki as a kind of outline, and then I use a number of books, which I suggest to you to check out if you want to dive deeper. I'm giving you a big rundown of most of the information, but there's always extra details, and honestly, if I wanted to go over every detail of every place, it would be hours and hours, and God, take that long to talk about all this stuff. It seems fun to talk about things for hours on end, but just we'll keep it relatively short. I'll go over the basics. So here's some books that if you want to learn about Qadira. The Campaign Settings book from 1st edition has some information on Qadira. The Inner Sea World Guide expanded on that. And then there are 2 books directly for Qadira. An older one from 2009, Qadira Gateway to the East. And of course a newer one that came out after that, Qadira Jewel of the East. You want to look into information on how Qadira has evolved into the 2nd edition of Pathfinder. Of course, the Lost Omens World Guide has a little bit of information and some updates on their country. It does a little bit of updates on most countries about what's been going on since 1st edition to 2nd edition. Okay. Qadira. So, it is a place known as the Gateway to the East. It's technically in Avasti, but it's also on the brink of the Kazmaran continent. So it's kind of like in this middle ground between Kazmaran and Avasti. It's between 2 continents. I would compare it kind of like Turkey in our world nowadays, where it's in both Europe and Asia. Its capital is Cathar. It is a satrapy of the Keleshite Empire. What does that mean? Well, it's basically... I'd have to define satrap, which... It's a provincial governor that existed within something like ancient Persia. That was a satrap. So basically, it's a kingdom within a larger empire that's being conquered, And the current satrap is Zerbistes II. It is the westernmost province of the Padishah Empire of Kelesh. Kelesh. We'll talk about Kelesh as a whole, but kind of when we talk about Kelesh, we have to talk about each of the owned kingdoms which are technically owned by it. It is a kingdom that has the power of the Kazmar Empire at its back. Remember, Kazmarun is the continent, and it's the Kelesh Empire is the one that controls a large chunk of Kazmaran. So that empire still exists today, and it's still huge and has a vast swath of territory it controls. It has a bunch of satrap states in amongst its own state, which again we'll have to talk about on its own at some point in time. It is the Kelesh doorway to the Inner Sea region. It is a very valuable piece of real estate for this region. Spices and gold flow through its capital, and the satrap boasts that his kingdom holds the wealth of any other 3 in the Inner Sea. Whether it's true or not, hard to say. So, history. The lands were not always under the control of the Padishah Empire, the Emperor of the Kelesh Empire. The original inhabitants were both the Keleshites of Kazmaran and of Gurundi of northern Gurund. They were nomadic people and survived by breeding goats, following seasonal migration patterns between the mountains of the east and the oceans of the west and south. They intermingled with native genies and other elemental creatures of the land, which can actually be seen in their population today. They have a high percentage of Naris, Undine, Sylphs, and Orids in their population in Qadira. So, yeah, this ancient kind of bonding with elemental creatures and genies of this land. So near the end of the Age of Destiny, which was about negative 78 AR, the Keleshites first invaded Qadira and raised the Emperor's green flag of conquest with the Black Blade of War across its field. 2 years, after 2 years, the Emperor of Kelesh, at the time, Aldin IV, formalized the conquest and added the Silver Blade of Kings to the flag. This is the flag we're showing off here. He made Qadira a satrapy of the empire under the rule of Satrap Srulish in negative 43 AR. Tensions between Taldor soon became afterwards, and the first conflict happened in negative 4 AR. Within 100 years, the border camp of Omash was established, and the Plains of Prouch was settled. The border was established in a frontier with Taldor. The border was fortified with 100 stone watchtowers, and the Keleshites bid their times and didn't invade, waiting for signs of weakness with the Taldanes. Skirmishes between the nations continued for centuries, eventually leading to Qadira seizing the town of Gurdaf from Taldor. During this time, the original Qadirian nomads slowly began to adapt Keleshite cultures and customs and settled into growing cities. It'd be 1,500 years before Qadiri's satrap finally expanded its borders. In 1532, Qadira Ancients toppled the weak Pharaoh Mendaz the 26th and annexed Osirian into Kelesh name. Xerxes the First began its still current system of government, and Satrapy, which is now hereditary, was in full powers in the border. The Gazetteer resolved to advise the emperor for external matters. And they would control Osirian for nearly 700 years. In 1540, a spawn of Rovagug named Volganar was defeated in the Zone Mountains. In 2217, Serenay, in its worship, was flourishingly Keleshite Osirian. The cult of the Dawnflower pushed for independence from the Padishah Empire. The satrap of Osirian attempted to put down the uprising, but failed to do so, and in 2253 it became independent of its rulers. Because remember, Osirian was under Kelesh's control through Qadira. There were wars and uprisings to deal with Qadira, natural disasters. There was a great earthquake in 2920 AR, which killed tens of thousands of Qadirians. In the 34th century AR, there was a succession struggle in Kelesh, and 40 Qadirian princes left in 4067 for Casmon to support their claims, but the conflict took 15 years to resolve. And of course, then we do have to mention, as we said before, they've been war with Taldor numerous times in history. The war drums of Cathene have been silent since the beginning of the Age of Lost Omens, but Qadira has never stopped waging its wars. Gold is a weapon, spices its shield, and its trading power is its armor. The last great war with Taldor began in 4079, when Qadirian Keleshite army of 40,000 crossed the southern border of Taldor and took advantage of the upheaval and relocation of its military due to the even-tongued conquest in the west. It lasted for 500 years, not ending until 3 years after the Age of Enthronement in 4603. The period became known in Qadria as the Dijiveni Victories. Whew. I'm going to top screen for a second, something's going on. I'm going to go check up on it, and then we'll switch over to images. I'll switch to images now, and then we'll continue. Just scroll a bit. Alright, understand what's going on. Crisis averted. Let's continue the video. I've got my cut point. Oh boy. I don't know how well that history section was because I was distracted by crises. We'll be okay. Things will be okay. I mean, so, the thing is, it is a distant but province of the vast and sprawling empire. As it's still kind of its own kingdom, but it's also still technically under a major empire, it doesn't have all the same powers a general government would have. It's a satrap. It still has some powers of its own. It still has a government and a place of its own. But whoever's in charge of it doesn't have all the power that it desires. They're still a political force, and they still have to do things to maintain their position every year. So the current satrap, Xerxes II, has to send 13 golden bulls and 300 concubines to the heart of the empire. But Xerxes II is rich. Remember, I said, Qadira has proven itself most nowadays through economic power. They've become a trade partner for the vast majority of the rest of the world and the empire. They have money to spend now. Any kind of power that he does have is, of course, curtailed by his vizier, Habazed Verjov, who was directly appointed by the emperor himself. So there is this, again, the vizier, who's the eyes, ears of the emperor, right next to him, keeping him in line and keeping him in, check, at least for his ego and such like that. So he has complete power within the borders of Qadira, but he's little control out of events outside of his border. Matters like how to handle piracy, trade, and war are still controlled by the Padishah Emperor, and by him directly through his vizier. And unfortunately for Xerxes, the Empire does not want war. So the vizier has restrained Xerxes' lust for yet another war with Taldor to the north. The Quadrians have always had this conflict with them, and they wanted conflict more. The big Empire is like, look, no. Not worth it, I don't want to get involved. So, Xerxes II has continued attempting to state his desire for conquest by charging his special noble advisor, known as the Peerless, with impossible tasks and quests, strengthening the 100-stone watchtowers on the Qadira-Taldor border, and achieving his goal through most subtle means. So all Quadrians are conscripted into 2 years of military service. That's an important thing to know about their military, too. So, you have 2 years of military service, and then you're good to go. And, since the peace treaty of 4603, Qadria has maintained a tentative truce with Taldor, though the nations are suspicious of each other, and Xerxes II still wants to, do some conflict there, saber rattles, And this has, especially since the new Grand Princess Satrapy has come to throne, he's been energized. Sees weakness, maybe? Qadria's in generally good terms with the undead nation of Geb and the city of Kapatish across the Omari sea. Though they are still on rocky terms with Assyrian, they conquered them, ruled them a long period of time. They remember the centuries of conquest by them. All foreigners are welcome with Qadria, but they're expected to register with the government as soon as they enter the country, and purging citizens of Kelesh is not tolerated at all. So, Qadria does have some productive mines and some natural resources. The thing is, that isn't enough, because most of their economy actually relies on foreign trade, both from deeper in Kazmaroon and the Inner Sea region. Their major trade routes include the Golden Path, an overland loop to Qadira, the Northern Track, a sea lane that begins at Sequig, follows the northern coast of the Inner Sea to Cortian and Cheliax, the Obari Crossing, a sea route which connects the Inner Sea with the destinations of Ibilios, Kelesh, or Verdund via the Obari Ocean. And like other nations in the Golden Road region, they're a major importer of wood and finished goods. Let's talk about its geography and locations in it. I'm not going to go to too depths about a lot of their cities. They have a lot of cities. They do. And I could talk about a lot of cities. But I'll kind of talk about the regions and the places that are in those regions. Kind of give you a general feel of it. So the thing about Qadira is, it's dry. The sands of many deserts hide ancient ruins there. To the east, of course, is Casmaran and the Kelesh Empire. And it's the westernmost Satrapy. It's got a lot of these trade routes, but it itself is a dry, deserty nation. To the north, Qadira lies the vast wilderness expanse of the Whistling Plains. The Whistling Plains being which is technically part of Taldan Empire, but really not, kind of, sort of. It's very wild area. Let's talk about the regions, though. There's the Avala Peninsula, which is the southern western coastline, with the cities of Ayash, Jawafek, I'm going to butcher some of these, Sedie, Sedek, Sukri, Ushimgal, and Yalak Hing. I will talk about one of the nations, the capital of Qadira. When we get to Qadira, we'll talk about it. Which is in the plains of Padishah. Of course, around this region is also the Minotaur Islands that are outside of that peninsula, which are part of the entire region here. The Kez Desert and its nearby island of Yanamire Island, which is off the coast of it. It's an arid desolate in the western part of Qadira that's bound by the Inner Sea and the Pamish River and the Zo Mountains. A lot of nomadic hunters, slavers, bugbears, Chinese giants, and things like in that region. There are a lot of settlements in that region there to talk about. Ur, Hapa, Hampa, Hawa, Kurudri, Merev, Marashai, Tekeh. If you want to look onto a little bit of each of these, you can. I'm just kind of giving basics about them and their names. Marev is a rich farmland between the Zo Mountains and Marev Richer. So that is one of the actual regions that's the least arid and has some farm, with Al, Harif, Isa, Nerfan, Paharid, Rashirs, Rikhists, Samashul as settlements within that region. Again, I apologize for any butchering of these things there too. There is also, of course, the Maraza Desert, which is a wasteland of dunes in southern Qadira, with the Zo Mountains to the north and to the west and south, the Obari Ocean. It is the westernmost section of Avastia and connects up with Casmarum there. So, as I mentioned, the overall countries in between the two, this is the point where we connect between the two continents here, the Maraz Desert. And within those, there are some settlements too. Dimayan, Hagar, Hushnash, Hushana, Hilar, Izet. Again, if I'm mispronouncing any of these very badly, sorry, not really trying. I'm just... English has never been the best language for me. In the Zo Mountains, which run through Qadira, splitting the nation in half. They are an effective barrier. They average about 7,500 feet. And they have a lot of feral beasts, draconic monsters, elemental outsiders, volcanic caverns. A lot of terrible things there with hidden communities of Naris, Orids, Sylphs, Undines, illusion magicals and that magic in that time. But it's got settlements both in the north and south. In the north is the Gazbalith, Karif, Namat, Omash, Qualdus, Mariv, Salav. In the south is Crystal Crag and Gurat. Pashman is a mountainous region between the rivers of Landan and Pashman, with Buraf, Ishid, Karim, Koka, Lapul, Shamara, Shilin. We'll keep the plains of Parish in a second, because that's the last one that we're going to talk about, because it's got the capital. But Kapor is a slightly forested steppe region in the center of it, with nomadic tribes and both halves of the Tapor forest. which has only one major settlement to mention, Haviland. So if you want to know about the Tapor Forest, which is kind of in that region too, that's there too. Which is northern and southern parts of it. Anyway, the Plains of Parish is the grassy plains in the northern, located north of the city of Qadira, the capital of the place. The plains stretch from the Pashman River up to the Jarun River and the Starry Coast, west to the Ladin River in the east. Shepherds, horse-breeding nomads. The nomads love the horses in this area. Yes. Of course, in this region is Alvarish, Avalon, Delana, Derma, and the capital, which we'll talk about a little bit, Kathir. That's the regions and the places within Qadria. Yes. Kathir is the glorious Golden Kathir. It's the capital, seat of power of the Satrap. It's got canyon-like harbor, center for trade goods to and from the Empire to the Inner Sea. It was founded in 1290 AR, next to ceremonial ground for the annual Histaquin horse race in its inaugural year. It began as a meeting ground, turned into a trading camp, and then a stone city, a city of stone and mortar. When the Keleshites conquered this region, they took the name of its own and named after the new land. They kind of were conquered. Basically because Kathir is the bastardization of the term Quadria in Kelesh, in a way. So yeah. And a lot of Kelesh from Inner Cosmere kind of came into the area, built up the place. There are some academies of learning, a lot of wealth here. It's a big trade city. We don't have a lot of details of the exact size and shape of Kathir, other than its major metropolis. It's one of those things that it's one of the few metropolises in the world that we don't have like breakdown of a lot of its districts and stuff now. So it's one that maybe we'll see in the future in a book or something. We visit Kathir. Alright, let's talk about who lives here, the culture here, and that kind of stuff. Because those are both important parts when we talk about a place and a country. Who lives there, and what kind of culture do they have? Who lives there? Well, it's overwhelming Keleshite. There are some expatriate Kaldans as well. There's beyond the bustling caravan cities. Quadrian towns and villages are modest in size, facing the challenge of defending himself against wild giants, draconic creatures, irate elementals, desert-dwelling beasts. Some of them manage to coexist harmony with these animatic creatures, such as Garat, which is a place, a haven for learning, where a Cyclops prophet known as the Mouthpiece of Garat imparts invaluable wisdom to the Satrap, safeguarded by 1,000 death soldiers. So that's kind of like an interesting thing there. Also, Geniekin are a large part of this entire region, as I mentioned earlier. It has the largest in all of the Inner Sea region. They're born to otherwise ordinary parents who have no idea of its elemental ancestry. Also, there are legends of hidden independent city, places in the Zo Mountains, as I mentioned, protected by illusion magic. There's also caravans of Kitaja catfolk that roam between the cities and oases of Qadria, and further afield in Kelesh. They're devotees of Serene, are wanderers who can be found congregating around bustling marketplaces of cities that they visit. So there's also a group of catfolk that live there, beyond your human populations. So when we talk about the culture of Qadria, the people are known for questioning persuasive speakers of both Haldane and Kelesh languages. They enjoy haggling over transactions. They hold family ties and reputations as very important, and rely on the patronage to engender trust of strangers and foreign groups, trust of strangers and foreigners between groups. English, please speak right for me. Gifts and hospitality are sacred obligations to them, and guests are expected to provide gifts to their hosts. Most Quadrians are renowned for their powers of persuasion, self-assurance, and a penchant for the luxury and high status, the strong sense of honor and generosity. Hospitality is both sacred and structured, and breaches of etiquette potentially leading to deadly feuds. This code of conduct extends even to criminal activities. Horse racing is their sport of kings. Champion jockeys were basically treated as war heroes here. The common people of Qadira share their pride of their leaders, and it's well-founded. They witness the shore of to their shores incoming visitors who marvel at the wonders of the Keleshite Empire. The wonders range from animated siege engines to flying carpets to groups of genie mercenaries and enormous elemental powers, sand ships gliding through the dunes on unseen winds. Caravans arrive daily in Gazetteer, showcasing creatures and knowledge that remain unseen in Western lands. The Vatican College of Medicamps and Surgery expertly melds magic and medical science to educate the most skilled healers in thousands of miles. The wealth of Absalon, and more importantly, trading communities profited and controlled by the great city, have long drawn the gaze of the satrap as the most powerful merchant princes. Many Quadrians are ready to leave their desert behind for the promise of illustrious Absalon gold. So basically, they really like the looks of Absalon, and many merchants are like, that might be a better place to be at, maybe? So Qadria has 2 holidays. I'm going to butcher these 2. Kalasharium and Butu al-Ayyim. The first celebrates the Padishah Empire and Qadria's allegiance to the Empire, and the second commemorates the birth of a popular romantic poet of the same name. So basically, the 2 holidays are, there's this famous poet, probably one of the most famous poets in all of Qadria, celebrated name for them, and the other one is, hey, Emperor, we love you, we're aligned to you. So the Church of Sarenrae is the official religion of Kelesh, and by extension, Qadria. So that's an important thing to note here. Sarenrae is the high religion. It's the most popular religion in Qadria, though it has 2 factions of her followers that clash between the political scene. An aggressive set agitates for further military expansion, primarily in Talmor. Younger and junior members have banded together opposing this path, seeing their goddess' primary interest in tolerance and redemption, not war and conquest. The government and public at large seems unaware of the schism, and it could flare up into fighting at any moment. In more recent times, the Church's determined campaign to eliminate slavery, accrued seemingly on the verge of success, has rendered its priests unwelcome in slave-trading harbors such as Sakib. And these ports, whose bottled djinns and jabberais imprisoned in amber, captive humanoids and caged monsters all occupy the auction block, the Church's emissaries face resistance. Other popular faiths in Qadria includes those of Aurori and Roviga. So this is an important part here. Qadria still has slavery, but it's kind of falling out of favor here. Because of Sarenrae being the major religion and church, it's one of those cultures that's beginning to evolve and change. While a lot of nations, either slavery is kind of a major part of it or going away because it's always been in the region here, this is one of those regions we're first seeing signs of it basically being removed in a way. There's also a secretive cult that's been arriving in Qadria from the east, known as the White Feather Monks, who preach pacifism. It's at odds with the satrap, who watch them closely. The satrap fears their ideology might spread to the greater public and put his war plans at risk. The Church of Sarenrae sees them as possible allies, but is unsure of the true motives. And again, the 2 main books I recommend for checking out stuff as we finish up today are The Gateway to the East, Qadria Gateway to the East, and Qadria Jewel of the East. Those 2 books that I showed off are the best ones I could recommend to dive deeper into a lot of the places, things you could see. I basically went over the basics, but if you want to look up the locations, a little bit more on these regions, some of these settlements and things like that, and dive deep into them, I recommend those books. But yeah, there we go. That's Qadria. I hope you enjoyed learning about a place that is in between 2 regions. We'll talk more about the great empire, which controls Chasm in the future. But for now, kind of keep in mind that this is that western edge of it, and it connects up 2 continents together. Where these 2 continents kind of splash together is where this place is. It is so important to 2 sides, and it's such a major trade place, and yeah, will war break out? Honestly, not likely as long as the current Emperor of Kelesh remains. New one comes in, something changes, who knows? We don't know what's going on with the satrap. The satrap is trying their best. So it's not like there is a lack of peace in this region, but peace remains, and the sprawling empire at its back remains strong. And so Qadira, even though it's just Satrap, it's a small nation that is basically part of an overall empire, they remain strong and do have a slight voice on their own. And one that's very interesting to learn about. You're connected with this empire, but they are unique in themselves in a way. And they are proud of themselves. They have been this sprawling jewel in the empire. And they can be proud of that. Everybody there can. And there is change happening there. That's the important thing to look at, that we still have that change even happening now with how Sarenrae has been changing the way things are working within the Empire. Sarenrae has had a large campaign to eliminate slavery. Their crusade is beginning to succeed. And so maybe Casmaroon, Qadira, and the Empire, in general, will become slave-free. Change the way they do things. Evolve into something new. In better places. Certainly, it just feels like that the Emperor doesn't want war anymore. You know, there was a lot of war in those pasts, and war has been called for here and there, but maybe now is a time for peace, of growth, of developing themselves into better people. Will Qadira truly follow that? With its satrap in charge, it's hard to say. But the people, certainly. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. That's it for today. I'll be back next time. I talk about this every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I do tabletop talks. Tuesdays tend to be Variety Day. Thursdays tend to be the Pathfinder Golarion days, and Saturdays World of Darkness. Tuesdays and Thursdays are between 1 and 2 normally, or a little later. And then Saturdays is at around 11 o'clock. So you can check that out then. Let's see here. I have the shoutouts. And let's see here. I have Discord and Twitter if you look at the social media. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by kittens fighting in the background. They've done that. They've moved in and started fighting in the background. DiscordTwitter.com. Check those out. Social media, kitten pictures, schedule, all that kind of stuff. I gave shoutouts for the channels. I think that's about it. I got distracted by kittens. So. Anyway, to those of you out there, hope you enjoyed, learned about Qadira, and until the next time we talk about any of these topics, more countries, more ancestries, more ethnicities, more parts of Golarion, history of Golarion, when we talk about something else, I bid all of you out there a wonderful and deep farewell.